Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to our Wheel of Time Sizzle Show, chatting about our favorite things about Wheel of Time. I am Lord Captain Commander Dunn of the King's Guard, also known as B. Malachi Dunn. I'm joined by one of my lovely guests, Lesbi Nerdy. Jen, welcome aboard.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's
Yeah.
my first time doing a stream, so it's exciting.
Yeah, it is fun. Basically, how this is going to work is we're basically going to be chatting for a while just about Wheel of Time and why we love it. Some introductions to start off with. Let me see, start off at the beginning. Just pull this thing to the beginning. So, to start off, Jen, how about you introduce yourself?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, my name is Jen. I am a big time Wheel of Time nerd. I've been reading these books for literally, I did some thinking about this the other day, it freaked me out a bit, for more than half of my life. I'm 45 now, and I started reading the books when I was 19 or 20, and just read them and reread them and reread them over and over and over again. And recently decided to make a channel where I talked about it, probably due to being bored, due to not being able to leave my house for a while.
Yeah, no problem. I feel you. I mostly started this as kind of just a writing channel, but I'm really excited to be finally able to talk about Wheel of Time, which I would say is like my favorite fantasy series of all time.
Yeah. Me too, definitely. To be honest, I haven't read all that much other fantasy. I've read a lot of books, but fantasy I have trouble with because of how much I love Wheel of Time. So I'll pick up another fantasy book and be like, oh, but I want to be back in Wheel of Time. So I just end up
Yeah.
reading it again.
It's that's kind of the main thing about Wheel of Time. It's so immersive and wonderful that you can just keep going back to it and just absolutely falling in love with each of the characters again and seeing how they develop.
Yeah, it's like I miss them. Like when they start again, and the first time I see Nynaeve, I get excited. It's like, oh, I haven't seen you for so long.
Yep.
Weird feeling.
Alrighty, so I know that some of my subscribers have probably actually not read or have heard about Wheel of Time. So what I would like to do is, let's go to the next bit. Wheel of Time at a glance.
Okay.
So as you can see, there is a pretty big cast, pretty large book series. It was written by Robert Jordan and finished by Brandon Sanderson. It started out with The Eye of the World, and which I would say is a pretty solid fantasy book for the 90s, pretty much. And over time, the series gradually evolved and became this sprawling epic. And I have very much enjoyed this series for how it developed. Especially the Sanderson books were three of my favorites of the series, and I was so satisfied with the ending with A Memory of Light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I actually just realizing I'm having a question. How are we going to deal with spoilers in this conversation?
That's a good question. I do not know.
All right.
So those in the chat, let's how about we say we will spoil up to say let's just keep things vague, I guess,
Okay.
up until like our favorite moments of the series.
Okay.
And then we will say those who do not want to be spoiled, please go away. But until then, we will keep things just general.
Sure.
But overall, like what? Oh, Chanthorpe says spoilers are fine. Okay.
Yeah, I saw that too.
So for you, like, what would you say, like, are some of your favorite aspects of the Wheel of Time?
Um, I think the characters are my favorite aspect. Like I said, I feel like I miss them when I'm not reading, and when I go back to the books, it's like seeing old friends again. But to be honest, I think what draws me in is the depth of the world. Like it just feels very, very real.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know. Like I feel like I understand it to the point that there are moments in that feel. It's such a weird thing I'm about to say, but there are certain, like very few and far between, but there are moments in the books that feel off to me, and my instinct, my mind will say, "Oh, this was written wrong." Instead, because it's not consistent with the reality of the world. Instead of remembering, "Oh no, it's fiction. It's all fiction." So,
That makes sense.
yeah,
I posted a link to I posted like I put the artwork. Like this is actually like my favorite artwork. I'm a big fan of Seamus Sketch's
yeah,
artwork of the
yeah.
Wheel of Time. Uh, and I'll actually be using more of it
Okay.
throughout. But like, kind of if I'm to introduce a few of these characters, we'll be going to some specifics. But from the top left, we have Miranda Madrid, the I guess the wise wizard analog of this story, who acts as a mentor to the three main heroes, Matrim Cawthon, with the dude with the black wide brimmed black hat, Perion, the bodybuilder type with the big beard, and then Randall Thor, the guy in the front. We It's interesting that we don't really have the only villain out of in this whole sketch is the one in the white dress, which is Lanfear, who is the evil ex-girlfriend stereotype taken to extreme levels.
Yes, that is a very good description.
Yeah, it's just like you lady, you crazy
Mhm.
and weird and
Yep.
yeah. We also have Egwene Alvear, who she's kind of a polarizing figure in the fandom, but I really like her as a character, and I really like love how she ends up
Mhm.
personally.
Yeah, I didn't realize how polarizing she was until like maybe a year or so ago. Like I said, I'm very new to being in the online fandom, so I thought my personal, somewhat conflicted emotions about her were odd. And then I went online and was like, oh no, I'm I'm not alone. Except more people, like most people, are way more extreme. I'm just like a little bit conflicted. Most people, a lot of people, do not like her. But okay, anyway, sorry. Continue with your summaries. Yeah.
No problem. Let me see. Uh, so we also have. Let me pull it back up again. So we also have a actually late edition with the character. It's actually really nice that Tuon Athem Devi Pendrag and uh, Matt are together for reasons that we'll probably go into in our favorite moments section, I imagine. Then we have Uno no Meshta, who is every foul mouthed sergeant archetype,
Mhm.
but he is absolutely amazing, and especially when he's around women he respects or thinks are of high station, because he'll try to curve his mouth.
Which is hilarious every time.
Yep. And then we have Tom Drell Marilyn, the dude in the patchwork cloak. It's not my favorite artwork of Tom, but I quite like him as a character, because especially I think some of my favorite moments of his come in the third book, in terms of because he is
Oh
absolutely on fire. He is on
yeah,
fire in that book, where honestly it's mostly because he's cooped up with Matt and he's miserable. It's like a clock. You would be surprised.
yeah,
Even a bad clockmaker is a very rich man, but a clock does not explode in your face.
Yes. No, it's awesome. Gosh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to let you in on a little secret. Well, not a secret, whatever it is, because of the fact like where I'm living right now in my life. I am not reading physical books these days. I am reading on my Kindle or on my phone, so I can never remember what happens in what book. So you're saying book 3, and in my head, I'm trying to remember which one is book 3. So
Yeah, the Dragon Reborn, where
Dragon
it's like,
Reborn. Yeah,
yeah,
I know. Yeah, where they're
where
traveling together to get to Tyr.
yeah, where it's
Yeah.
the Matt and Tom show.
Yes. Yes.
And then in the middle far right, we have Avienda, who is kind of a late, she's kind of a mid-tier character, but she eventually develops into a very, very good, strong character in and of herself because she's forced to, because of some things that you find out in book 4, all this kind of, because she is a maiden of the spear, you meet her and she's basically part of this warrior society, but she's running away from her responsibilities because she is a channeler or a magic user in this world. And so her culture is saying, no, you have to do your duty and develop your abilities to help the people or the Aiel.
Yeah.
And then we have it's nice that these two characters are right next to each other. We have Berelain and Aiel.
Oh God.
Yeah. How would you summarize Berelain and Aiel and their relationship to Perrin Ibarra, the bodybuilder type in the exec center?
Well, okay. Fael is Perrin's. I mean, this is a spoiler, but it's actually Fael's Perrin's wife. Berelain is his.
She's a homewrecker. She's a homewrecker.
She's a wannabe side chick. But it's just, that's a whole plot line that I do not enjoy. Anyway.
I do not enjoy it as well. It would be honestly like somewhat hilarious if they merged the two characters into one, but I don't know how you would do that.
Oh gosh, I never even thought of that. That would be interesting.
Because they're very different.
So very, yes.
But then in the center, in the yellow dress with the long braid, is your favorite character.
Yes, there's my girl.
Yeah, Nynaeve Tialmira Mandragoran. And how about you discuss her, since I think that you'll be very passionate in terms of discussing this wonderful female character.
Okay. Well, let's see. Nynaeve starts off, she is the wisdom of her village. She's the caretaker, the healer. She's very young for that position and finds out very early on that she is a magic user, a channeler, but she didn't know that, and she hates that about herself. She, in my opinion, my personal opinion of Nynaeve, she is incredibly, not confident. Has incredibly low self-esteem, and she overcompensates for that by being overbearing and very hypocritical, aggressive, insisting that she's always right all the time. And in my opinion, it's because she feels very, very bad about herself all the time. So she's also, I should point out, one of the most powerful magic users in the book. She is, for a long time, the most powerful female magic user in the books, but she can't access her power unless she's angry.
Which is an interesting dichotomy, because usually in order to use magic, you need to be calm and centered.
Exactly.
It's like the Force in a lot of ways. But then we have Perrin Ibarra, who is the fuzzy teddy bear, who is kind of put in with a very, very different woman to himself.
Yes.
I quite enjoyed your video about Fail where you discussed that yes, it totally makes sense that she gets bristly when he says I'm not doing anything when she doesn't when she brings it up when she doesn't bring it up because he can smell the fact that she's jealous.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. If you don't accuse somebody of something and then they suddenly start denying the thing that you wondered about, well, now you're even more curious, even more suspicious.
Yeah. And especially since like she's a fierce lady who
Yeah.
for whatever reason likes being shouted at by her husband.
God. Yeah. This would not be me. So.
I personally like would be deeply uncomfortable doing that.
Yeah, me too.
Like to any woman, let alone my wife. And it's
God.
like it's interesting that Robert Jordan put it in that like she likes being it's that she wants to be taken feels like she's being taken seriously.
Yeah.
It's just, what do you think about that, by the way? That's a weird cultural thing that the Saldaeans do that I don't know how I feel about that.
It's unusual. I will say there is a part of it, like if you saw the video that I made, there is a part of it I actually like. This idea that you, as a part of your culture, you have it that fighting is not a threat to a relationship. Like getting angry at your partner shows that you feel that your relationship is stable enough to sustain or to weather this fight. I don't like the fact that yelling has to be a part of it because some people, like you and me, apparently are the same on this. I would not enjoy yelling at anybody. Like when I'm angry, that is not. But I like the idea of it. Quite honestly, it's a personal story from my life, but it gets a bit dark. But one of my friends is married to a man who his parents, like his mother was abused, and so whenever he would get angry at home, he would leave the house. Like they would start to have a fight and he would leave. And it would drove her nuts. She'd be like, we have a topic, we have to discuss this issue. And he would just leave. And finally they had to sit down and have, I guess, the equivalent of what Fail and Perrin did, to have a sit down and have a discussion about how we have to fight. Because you fight by leaving the room and then not discussing anything. And I want to fight by actually discussing the issue that we're upset about so we can come to a conclusion. And the reason he was leaving, obviously, was that he was afraid of becoming like his dad. But I remember the first time they had a fight, even though I was not there, because she told me about it. She's like, it's such a weird thing. I'm really happy that my husband was able to stay in the room and we had an argument because it shows that he trusts himself with me. And it's a weird thing, but I understand a little bit, maybe because of that story from my life, that aspect of Saldaean culture. I just hate that it has to be loud and violent and physical. It's weird.
Yeah, and a little bit too high emotion for a lot of people's tastes.
Yes.
Yeah. And then we have kind of a character who, even though he has very little page time throughout the books, is one of the more popular characters. We have Loghain Ablar, the dude in the middle in black. He is interesting because we don't get a POV of this guy until the very last book.
Yeah, I was going to say, yes, we do. But yes, you're right. It's in the last book.
and yet, like, because even though he has he doesn't have any like POV early in the novels, you still get a good sense of his character. Because in the very first book, he is this powerhouse political figure who is news about him is spreading throughout the whole world that he has declared himself the chosen one or the dragon reborn in order to because he felt like because he is a powerful magic user in and of itself. And we'll get into like the world and an overview of the series in a little bit once we've kind of sizzled a little bit on the characters, because I find that the characters are the most interesting thing about the Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
And then we see him horrifically humbled in book 2 and throughout the rest of a lot of the series, where he is a broken man because he's been basically magically neutered.
Yeah.
and cut off from his ability to use magic permanently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm laughing, but I guess you know why.
Yes, I know full well why. Yes, that's a pretty big moment.
Yeah.
And um, then we have Min on the far left, far bottom left. She's interesting. I've heard the joke several times where, and I hadn't thought about it the first time I read it, that a lot of people in the fandom call her a sexy lamp
Yep.
after certain point in time,
Yep.
which is actually true.
Kinda. Yep.
Yeah, she doesn't do very much in a lot of the books. She's just kind of there to be emotional support for Rand and be there and look pretty.
Yeah. Yeah. I still like her as a person though, but yeah.
Yeah. I think part of it is just she becomes a bookworm and likes philosophy.
Yes. Yep. It's true. It's very true.
Yeah, kind of because she has a unique talent in this world that she sees images and auras that are like specific to that person. Like she'll see like a flash of an image, and sometimes she'll know, sometimes she won't. But it's really interesting to kind of take a look at her visions in book one, see how they play out in the rest of the series, and then go back and reread and look. Oh, okay, this is this is this, and this is this.
Yeah.
Throughout the rest of the book. And she is very feisty. I think that's one of the things that I like about her as a character is that she's very feisty and she doesn't take crap from anybody, not even like Rand, who is
Yeah.
the big Dragon Reborn. And we'll go into him in a little bit. But then we have Elaine Tricand, who she often has the most boring stories in the series.
Yeah. It's weird. I've literally forgotten her name on multiple occasions. And I don't dislike her. I think she's fine. I think I was about to say great. I don't know. I think she's good.
She's not badly written. She's not badly written. It's just that a lot of like her plots are not very high tension, even though
it's not exciting. But
yeah.
I have zero strong feelings about Elaine.
I don't really have like strong feelings one way or another. I think that like one of the issues that we have with Elaine is that the main tension stories that she has are in the 11th book.
Yeah, which is a problem.
Yeah, like when it's like solely focused on her.
Mm-hmm.
And then throughout like 9, there are a couple of moments where she is in danger, but there's no consistency in terms of the danger.
Yeah.
There's no pressure on her as a character to do certain things like there is on, say, Matt, Rand, or Perrin, or even Nynaeve.
Exactly, yeah.
And then we have one of my favorite characters, Suan Sanche.
Yeah.
I love Suan Sanche and her constant fish metaphors.
Oh, fish guts.
You salted carp, Garth,
yes.
Bloody Bryn.
No, she's great.
Yeah, I love her. I think she is actually the most powerful woman in the world at the start of book 2.
Yeah.
And she is large and in charge, abrasive, and just takes no garbage from anybody. But
at all. She doesn't have time for it.
Yeah, she doesn't have time for it. And she's a woman on a mission, along with Moraine, to find the chosen one who will save the world, the Dragon Reborn. However, she gets humbled real quick.
Yeah. And severely.
Yeah. And it's like, ow, this is a horrible comeuppance.
Yep.
And then to the side we have Garth Bryn, who comes into his own in book 5 as a character. He's introduced very briefly in book 1,
Mm-hmm.
and then comes in book 5, and he's very much a solid brick of a man who
Yep.
is able to take even the weatherings of Swan Sanche.
Yes.
There's even a story that he tells his men of like, I had a terrible, I weathered an experience with the Amerlin, and I
Mhm.
came out alive, but I felt like I had been verbally skinned to
Yes.
the bone.
Yes. Well, that's what Swan do. That's how she
Yeah,
does. Yeah.
yeah, Swan, I do, and it's so interesting that she is able to like she becomes funnier as the series goes on, I think, because she
Yeah.
just kind of lets loose and is done with propriety.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's just absolutely just free with herself. And she just hates being like trodden down at all,
Hmm.
especially after
Yeah.
like being so high and going so low.
Yeah. She is pragmatic. That's the word I would use for Swan. She is intensely pragmatic. Like
Yeah.
whatever it takes to get the job done, she's going to do it.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. She's very much of like, if I what cannot be dealt with must be endured.
Yeah.
Or and so that is kind of her philosophy on life. And then we
Yeah.
have Alan Mandragoran.
Ah, yes.
So Lan Mandragoran is a man who disappears for most of the series after being
Yes.
a fairly prominent character for the first 5, and just kind of fades into the background a bit. And
Hmm.
then finally comes back into his own with Towers of Midnight and the A Memory of Light.
Yeah.
One thing to kind of be aware in this series is that most of the main cast lives through a lot of the books. This isn't necessarily like Game of Thrones, where there are several deaths that happen
Yeah.
of main characters. This is more kind of a throwback to traditional fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, only it's taken in a more um, slightly realistic light. I remember an interview where Robert Jordan said he was always had a problem with the idea of you were born to save the world, and the guy goes, "Oh, okay, better go,
Yeah.
Gov." And then the people are like, "All right, we'll follow you." And they're more likely to go like, "Oh, really? Have a beer and two on
Yeah.
me. Here you go." And they sneak out the door.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And that was kind of how he came up with this idea. So now that we've kind of set up the characters, let's kind of talk about like the world itself
Okay.
and the uh, kind of the world, the story, and such like.
Sounds good.
So the world of Wheel of Time is kind of it's focused primarily on this one area called Randland or the
The
Westlands.
Westlands. Yeah.
Yeah,
Randland is the colloquial term we use for it.
or the Westlands, the wetlands, such
Mm.
like. Nobody really knows fully like what it's called in the fandom. It's
Mhm.
just this is what it is.
Yeah.
And it is a very fascinating world that Robert Jordan created because there's so much richness in terms of culture in this world and a lot of history. Not quite as detailed as, say, George R. R. Martin, who's kind of obsessive about his history
Hmm.
to the point where he made 2 giant history books.
Oh, wow. Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, one moment. I I gotta share um uh uh the so to kind of compare the with Robert Jordan did have his own world book, but he had it's much smaller. It's actually like probably like a half the size of a World of Ice and Fire.
Okay.
It's huge and it's beautifully illustrated. Like it has some of the most gorgeous artwork I've ever seen in my life.
Nice. Okay.
Let me see. World of Ice and Fire.
As I mentioned to you before, I think we came in live. I've watched Game of Thrones, but very recently and only once. And I've never read the books, to be honest. So I didn't know he had all this like background stuff.
Yeah, he like did a lot of stuff. This is kind of the World of Ice and Fire size. Like it's
wow. Okay.
Yeah, it is as large as my chest.
That's wow. That's intense.
Yeah, like it's huge.
I was gonna say, we Wheel of Time people, Dragonsworn. I was about to say wheelies, and I am so sorry. we Dragonsworn. We've got the white book and the companion, but those look nice. Those look really nice.
Yeah, he created that, and it's huge. It's huge. Like it's like as big as like I'm putting my two fingers to it. It's like 2 inches thick or something. And
Wow.
that's just his generalized world book. That's not his 700-page Targaryen, half of the Targaryen history.
Wow. Okay.
And that's the first half.
Yeah.
He's doing a second half at some point.
Damn. But okay, so you like they've done this for George R. R. Martin did this for Song of Ice and Fire. Robert Jordan didn't do that for the Westlands or for this world, but I honestly the depth and the consistency in the world makes me think that he had all of that information.
Like, I would agree with that.
Like it feels real, even if we don't know all the backstory. The stories are consistent enough that it feels like, oh yeah, no, this world has a real solid background, even if we don't know it.
I think part of the thing that helps with that is the slow pace of the series.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Yeah, because there aren't like a lot of leaps that we have to go through in terms of time. Like we're always like maybe we'll skip like a week or two, but that's the nice thing. And sometimes like it'll just happen like a day or two after the action.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's 14 books, like not including New Spring. It's 14 books that cover about 2 years. So it's like it would be very weird if there were a lot of time jumps in there.
Yeah, it would. But basically, this universe is actually very interesting. It's actually similar to, in terms of its setup, it's actually similar to the book series Prince of the Broken Empire trilogy, Prince of Thorns, if anybody has read that, where basically this place used to be a high-tech universe, a high-tech planet. And then a horrible cataclysm happened and rendered it back to medieval times, essentially.
Yeah, around there, like or like 17th century or something. Yeah.
Basically, and like when we pick up with the series, we're introduced in a village called Emmonsfield. That's kind of like the usual like Shire type village where it's nice and homely, good farm folk. And then we transition out of that and we realize that this world is more of a Renaissance era than a like Dark Age fantasy like George R. R. Martin's George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire or the Broken Empire trilogy, where that's kind of living in the ruins of modern civilization.
Yeah.
And the reason for this is because a man named Luz Theron Telamon, or the Dragon, broke the world along with a bunch of other men who could channel after he sealed the embodiment of evil away. But the issue was the embodiment of evil, called the Dark One or Shaitan. Hopefully I don't bring his attention on me. Had his revenge by corrupting the male half of the true source so that any man who used it would go crazy and just lose touch with reality.
Yeah.
And so because of that, the world was torn into the landscape was changed, the cities were destroyed, people became refugees, and then eventually there was a coming together of the nations, and they figured out a way to live. But 1,000 years, it seemed as though at every 1,000-year interval, there was some kind of reset button.
Yes.
First one was the Trolloc Wars, and we're going to be going into some of the interesting things, because one of the things that Robert Jordan did with this was he took the base idea of orcs and ring wraiths and totally made them his own.
Yeah.
So Jen, would you explain what shadow spawn are and what they're utilized as in this
show? Okay, well, the shadow spawn were created, so they didn't exist before, like, as he talked about the War of Shadow after. Well, anyway, right before when all the men went mad, or after the men went mad. No, before. Sorry, I'm just got in my head. But the shadow spawn were created by this guy Agenor, I think, and they're basically like, for example, the Trollocs. They are a mix of animal and human, and even like if you think about it too much, it gets really gross because I don't know what he did to do that. But they are a mix of animal and human. But there's a bunch of different shadow spawn. There's the Trollocs are kind of like orcs. They are big bestial creatures who don't seem to be very intelligent, but they are insanely strong. They're the Murdral, which are actually Trolloc children who have a bit more of a throwback to their human ancestry, but nobody really understands them. Even the Agenor didn't fully understand them, and they have powers that nobody fully gets. They can sort of travel through shadow. They are terrifying. Like, they instill fear in you. When I say they're terrifying, I literally mean that. It's not just that they look terrifying, but something about them makes you have fear, even if you are a very brave person. Yes, okay, so we've got some pictures here of Trollocs.
Oh, it's not very good, though. Let me zoom in a little bit.
That's okay. But yeah, there's all sorts of different types of Trollocs. So it's not just one animal. There's multiple. There's the Drakkar, which are like bat-like creatures, which can suck out your soul. I don't want to go into all of them because some of it gets a bit spoilery. But basically, they're created evil creatures that fight for the forces of evil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got a better size of it right here.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are Trollocs. If you notice, we have like a boar, a goat, a wolf, and an eagle. And we have all of these things as our... It creates an interesting variety of, like, what would usually be kind of faceless antagonists.
Yeah.
Give them a little bit of nice variety. But the main thing that is used as the horror of this particular series is what she was saying, the merge roll, which literally there's an expression in the series that is the look of the eyeless is terror.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So yeah, even people who are very brave get afraid in their presence because they have some sort of eminence from them.
mm-hmm. Yeah, like one example of it is they look human. They look like regular, like tall men.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's one distinct difference. They
Oh
are
yes.
slug white and they have no eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's creepy because that's one of the worst, like, creepy things that you see in something is the fact when somebody doesn't have doesn't have eyes, but they can still see.
Yeah.
And most of the shadow spawn, as they're called, are concentrated in the far north, the Blight. However, despite being in the far north, it's actually hot in the Blight. It's actually like really terribly humid because of the rotting foliage all around.
Yes.
And one interesting thing that we have about the Blight that we mostly learn about from one of my personal favorite characters, Alan Mondragon,
Mm-hmm.
is just how deadly and dangerous. Because if this guy, who is pretty much the most badass sword fighter we've seen in the series, is careful within the Blight, you know it's bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Like everything in the Blight is trying to kill you. Everything. Like the trees are trying to kill you. It's yeah. Okay. Okay. This topic.
I seem to have lost one of my presentation bits.
Okay.
One moment. Let me see if I can undo it real quick.
Okay.
But I think like the nice thing is we kind of start out with kind of this kind of what would have been the normal like bit where like where we see the I think it's the one of the most iconic moments in the series is actually the moment where Rand and his dad are just walking around the quarry road.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we start off with a kind of a confusing prologue that is designed to throw you off a little bit, but it's also meant to give you some hints of what is to come. We have a man who has gone mad, and that is our Luz Theron Telamon.
Mhm.
And he's visited by this guy who's saying all of this nut stuff that we don't understand. And then abruptly it's revealed, oh, you killed your wife and your children and your entire family because you went nuts.
Yeah.
And we ultimately don't have like much context, and then we're abruptly like time shifted 3,000 years into the future.
Yeah. That prologue demands a reread. Like it's one of those things that I think if you just read the whole series, you wouldn't like. You have to go back and read the prologue at a certain point because it doesn't make any sense to you the first time you read it. You're like, what is this? So, yeah. It's awesome though. The prologue is great.
Yeah, it is. I think one of the main things that kind of like gets us grounded immediately is the character of Rand al'Thor and how like even when you first meet him, he is out of his element.
Yeah.
And like even in his own home, like he feels out of place. Not like in the like the usual like I guess like Disney princess kind of way. Where he like wants adventure. He's like kind of happy where he's at.
Yeah.
He's just kind of feels out of place due to like he just looks different than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's specifically described as like being tall, pasty, kind of tan, but pasty white with bright red hair
Yeah,
and
and
blue eyes.
gray eyes. Gray eyes.
Gray, well, gray eyes.
Yeah.
I just got it back.
Okay. Because I can hear you typing furiously.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of just that moment where it's just like, dang it. But then, thank goodness.
I understand.
Thank goodness for Alt Undo.
That's good.
Let me see. Let me share it.
Okay. All right, so I see it coming up.
Yep. So like, in terms of like kind of how it started, like what would you say is like your individual history? Like how did you get into the Wheel of Time?
Okay. Well, in university, one of the courses I took was the literature course, and we read Lord of the Rings. And I really, it took me a while to get into Lord of the Rings. It was very hard for me to start enjoying it, but it was very weird. There was a very quick shift that happened where I suddenly couldn't put the book down. Like I would have it beside me in my car, and then when I would get to a red light, have to pick it up, and so because I could read for 30 seconds while the light was red, and then put it down. Like I couldn't put the book down. It was so good. And when I was finished it, my roommates were, at the time I was in, as I said, in university, my roommates were so excited that I had read Lord of the Rings because they were big fans of it. So I asked one of my roommates, actually not even my roommate, I asked her boyfriend for a recommendation of a fantasy book because I thought I liked Lord of the Rings. I want to try more fantasy, but I remember I very specifically told him I don't want a series. I want to try one book to see if I actually like this genre. And he gave me Eye of the World. And to be fair to him, he hadn't finished it. He'd gotten about halfway through the book and decided he didn't like it. So he just gave it to me thinking it was a one-off and was like, here, you can have this book. So yeah. So anyway, I read it. I liked it. I remember getting to the end and thinking, oh, that was weird. Like it's a very weird way to end this story.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff in Eye of the World that only makes sense once you've read the series.
Yeah. Okay, it's one book this is no, I won't do it. But it's a very odd feeling when you get to the end of it. Like it feels like something happened that is climactic and cathartic, but it also doesn't, it gets weird. But because I had only asked for a one-off, I assumed it was a one-off. And because it was in the 90s, I didn't like go online and look it up. I just was like, all right, well, that was weird. And then months later was in a bookstore and saw a cover that reminded me. I was like, oh, that looks like the style of that book I read, and picked it up, and it was The Great Hunt. I was like, oh, there's a part 2. And then like, oh, there's a part 3, there's a part 4, there's a part. I just bought them all. And devoured them. And then I'm one of the people who, I can't remember how many books were out, but I got them all and I read them and then reread them. And then every time a new book would come out, I would start again. And usually I would reread between a new book coming out, I reread the books up until that point, maybe 3 or 4 times. So the most recent books, like your favorites, the Sanderson books, are the ones I've actually read the least, just because of the way time works. So,
Yeah, no, you're totally fine. Like I think what would you say are like your favorite books that like really clicked with you out of the series?
I mean, the one, okay, like I said, I have trouble remembering the titles because of the way I'm reading them now. I'm not holding a physical book in my hand. The one with Druidian, I think that's book 4.
Yes, Shadow Rising.
Yeah.
Let me pull that up then.
Okay. Thank you. Can you make it bigger so I can say? Okay, yes. Okay, yeah, Shadow Rising, because that's I love the Ruidian, that whole, like, it's such a good, I don't know, so many things come to fruition in that story, and I really, really just enjoy it a lot. Knife of Dreams is really good. Oh, Lord. Okay, honestly, I would say the first 6 are fantastic. Like, they're fantastic. And then, of course, those of you in the know will know about something called the Slog.
Where it very much slows down as compared to how it was previously.
Yeah, like, it's a very weird thing. Like I said, I still reread the books, but because of the way I'm reading them, I don't know the titles. What will always happen is at a certain point, I'll think, oh, I need to take a break from Wheel of Time. And whenever I do that, it is always, like, it's not intentional. It's not like, oh, I've gotten to the Slog, but it's always one of those books that
It's
I'm
almost
just like,
subconscious.
yeah,
It's almost subconscious.
It's just like, yeah, I just need a break. I just need a break. And it's like in the middle of Path of Daggers, or it's in the middle of Crossroads or something. Like, it's just that. But I'd say, no, The Great Hunt is also really good. The Great Hunt is amazing.
Yeah. It's a wonderful fantasy heist book.
Yes.
Heist/chase book.
Yeah.
Kind of, they have this magical artifact called the Horn of Valir that they find in the middle of book 1. And or at least like the end of book 1.
Yeah.
And the bad guys steal it. Now they have to chase after them before they get away. And one of the problems that they have to run into, this is kind of moving on to a little bit of a later on in the presentation, but I thought I'd do this, was creating this little thing called the heroes and villains section.
Okay.
Where one of the bad guys that they have to go up against is a man by the name of Padon Fane.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is kind of like my favorite artwork of the man.
Oh, God. Yes. Seamus.
Yeah, it's really, really creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And it fits the character because the character himself is really, really, really creepy.
Yes.
He is a dark friend. He is a murderer. He is a sadist and a torturer. He's a rapist. He's kind of like, he's very much like Ramsay Snow with magic and with a magic knife in a lot of ways.
Okay.
But he gets less screen time than Ramsay Bolton does.
Yes, he does. And we don't see it. Like, that's one interesting thing about the Wheel of Time. I think, again, I've only ever seen Game of Thrones, so comparing the books I can't really do. But obviously in the series, there's a lot of graphic showing of violence and torture. The same level of violence and torture happen in the Wheel of Time, but it's implied. It's implied. It's very different, but it's still there. It's definitely still there.
It's actually kind of more horrifying in some ways, where your mind is left to imagine some of the terrible, terrible stuff. Yeah. But that's kind of the thing that we have with this. It's like, a lot of people kind of think that, like, the Wheel of Time is like, oh, it's totally PG-13. It's like,
it's PG-13 if you don't let your mind go to those places.
Yes.
Right.
It's the rating is dependent on your level of imagination.
Yeah. Like, it's a very, because when they do it visually, if they, like, in the books, there's a scene where, I'm not going to say, but there's a scene where apparently humans are put through something equivalent to a meat grinder. That's literally language used in the books. But they don't describe, like, intestine, whatever. If you put that on screen, it's not PG-13. But if you just say that sentence in a book, your mind can just go, oh, that's gross, I'm not going to think about it.
Yeah. Like, yeah, that's a very horrifying moment. It's a cathartic moment, but it's also just like, dang, son.
Yeah. It's a moment, like, honestly, for me, it's a moment that I don't know that it hit me the first time I read the books. That's the one that has come like as I reread, because like I said, as I don't like gore, so when I hear a sentence or see a sentence that is gross, my mind will just go, "Oh, bad thing. Skip the bad thing." Like that's a no-no. But when you reread, the weight of it lands, and it's that's a bad, like it's not just, "Oh, that's a bad thing, skip it." It's like, "Oh, that's a bad thing that is happening right now." You're right. Like it's like a oh damn moment.
Yeah, or like I think a big thing about this series, like I always kind of imagine is they just kind of turn to bloody mist.
Yeah.
Kind of like how like they die in like Dark Phoenix, or well,
Okay.
in X-Men 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, like as like when I first read it, now I'm like,
Nope.
no,
Nope.
no, that's some graphic stuff right there.
Yeah, this is gore. But
Yeah,
again, it's told with one sentence. Like they
yeah.
don't go into it in detail, but so you can, like in your mind, you can do it in a PG-13 way if you want to. But
If you
yeah,
think about it,
it's not.
yeah,
It's really not.
yeah, yeah. There's and like also like the Trollocs are cannibals. They'll eat
Yep.
people.
Yep.
They eat people, and it's implied that Myrddraal rape women, which
It's
is
yeah.
creepy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just constant. They're constantly going on about the fact that like Myrddraal have a voracious appetite for women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And like let's not even talk about why they capture people in the blight and what do they do to them to make the Myrddraal weapons. Like it's all horrifying. It's
yeah,
horrifying, but they never say what it is. Like I can tell, like when I watched Game of Thrones, I literally screamed out loud the first time I was alone in my apartment. It was quite embarrassing because my neighbor thought something bad had happened. I screamed out loud when somebody was cut with a sword and like their intestines fell out, and I just never like I had never seen that before and was not expecting it. And I've said this before. Everybody had prepared me. Oh, there's a lot of nudity in Game of Thrones. Nobody prepared me for the violence. I was not expecting the level of gore at all.
yeah,
So
yeah. I think that like the only show that I've ever seen that is more horrifying than Game of Thrones is Hannibal.
yeah.
But
God.
that's only because the people who made Hannibal, I am convinced that they have really dark stuff in their brain that they are just like, I need to exercise this stuff by
This
putting it on a TV screen because otherwise I'm going to do this in my actual life.
Oh God, that's dark. That's really dark.
At least that's my theory. Otherwise, how would they come up with like this cannibalistic murderer, like literally like keeping bits of humans in his freezer and then serving them up to his
Feeding to his
guests?
friends. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
or like the arrangement of dead bodies,
The way
resin
that
covered bodies.
he like flays them in trees and like art. Oh yeah,
It's so creepy.
it really is.
Um, like that's kind of just like that particular show. I'm only partway through, and I'm very interested to see where it goes.
Mhm.
And I know that eventually, like, I'm hoping to do like start like a stream with like my regular co-hosts on like the Last Kingdom show because
Okay.
I love that show. That show is amazing.
I haven't seen that one, so maybe I'll put that on my queue.
Yeah, it's on the full thing's on Netflix. It actually like the first season is actually like it's like I think it's like an 8 to 7 out of 10, and it's the weakest of all the series of all the
Oh wow.
seasons.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and then season 2 is really even better. Season 3 is even better, and then season 4 is the best of them.
Okay.
And it's interesting because like it was originally on BBC, and then Netflix took it over and said,
Mhm.
we'll do this." And seasons 3 and 4 were under Netflix. And they're like, I'm just grateful that they did what Amazon did for The Expanse and just gave it like a new lease on life.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Um, But now let's kind of chat about like our main trio of
Mhm.
characters.
Okay, so our
Uh,
boys here.
yep. We here we've kind of chatted a little bit about them earlier in the stream, but we have in the center we have our main protagonist, Randall Thor, the Dragon Reborn, Lord of the Morning, and all of that. Uh, the King of Ilion never did style himself so.
Oh wow, you're good at that.
Uh, I do be good at the Ilianer accent. It's mostly lowering the voice and doing a lot of doobie and
Yeah.
by my mother's grave.
Hi, dooby dooby doo. Sorry.
I, Bill, I do. One of the wonderful things about the Wheel of Time is the accents that he
Mm,
gives people. Like
yeah,
Karianen have a very specific way of talking. Ilianers have a specific way of talking.
yeah,
And each culture is wildly different. Like in we have the Tyrans, we have the Ilianers, we have the Kyrianen, we have the Andorans.
mhm,
We have so many like rich, rich cultures in this particular world, and each one like has a different like dress and style and so many
yeah,
things and and one like it's interesting that Robert Jordan spends most of his page time describing dresses for whatever reason.
yeah. He. Oh God, he loves a dress. He really loves a dress.
Which is a very interesting thing. Like he clearly loves clothes and swords.
Yes, it's fascinating. This for me, I find people will say things like, "Oh, audiobooks aren't real reading because I can't skim an audiobook. When I listen to a book, I have to listen to every single word. I did not realize how much detail he had put into the dresses until listening to the audiobooks. It's like, oh my God, he's still describing the dress? Like, I don't care. it's,
Well,
it's like, he described that woman's dress. Okay, it's because that woman's important. But he's not going to continue describing he's describing every character's dress. Oh, wow. Like,
and lots of bosoms, lots and lots of
yeah.
bosoms.
Oh, so many bosoms.
That word, I think there's like a video of like a supercut of like this guy reading all of the times that the word bosom comes up in Wheel of Time.
Oh, he should definitely do it for breast. Like, sorry, I'm gonna say this just to anybody listening. I love these books, but like, why does every single time he mentions the ring that Nynaeve wears, why is it always nestled between her breasts? Why can't she just be wearing a bloody necklace? No, we have to remember that it's nestled between her fun bags. Yes. Yeah. But he doesn't even say cleavage. It's always nestled between her breasts. She folds her arms under her breasts. There's a scene where a woman gets stabbed in the chest. The knife blossomed between her breasts.
But yeah, that's kind of it's a weird choice. It's not so. Robert Jordan kind of has at least like he doesn't have the problem that George R. R. Martin sometimes does with how he writes things.
I say I haven't read George R. R. Martin, so I can't comment on that.
So he uses euphemisms like fat pink mast and mirror swamp. Sorry,
what? Oh my gosh, I'm laughing. That's insane.
I kid you not.
Oh, wow.
Like he uses the euphemism fat pink mast.
Damn.
And then mirror swamp.
Oh, Lord. Why? Just okay, so Robert Jordan is just at least just saying breast. That's what it is. It's a breast. Well, there's two of them. Yeah. I mean, I think that Robert Jordan was a boob man, which is fine. That's fine. You can like boobs. That's no problem.
Well, Other than when he's writing Matt, where he's like looking at everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. But like every single, with the exception actually of Tuon, every single other woman is at some point alluded to the fact that no, she's got big ones. Just in case you wondered.
Yeah, they're waifus. All of them are waifus.
Yeah, exactly.
So
oh god, fat pink mask. That's insane. Okay.
yeah, it's like yes, that's when he's kind of describing Gilly and Sam getting together in the books.
Okay. Wow.
I am glad that I elicited a funny reaction.
I mean, I guess I should have realized because of all the sex in the show that he had to have written all of this sex, and how would you write that? But that is a phrase I would never have thought of.
Yeah.
Swamp, fat pink mast. Wow. That's some sexy talk.
Indeed. Well, back to the Chad alpha male Rand. So, slight spoiler here. Rand gets 3 girls in the show.
Yeah.
Or in the series of books, which is a very interesting decision by Mr. Jordan.
Yes. If I'm going to be completely honest, it's one I am not a big fan of, to be honest.
I'm neutral, but explain kind of why you are not necessarily a fan.
Okay, I'm probably going to make a video about this where I'll go into it in more detail, but
consider this a preview.
Yes.
It's a preview.
First of all, he gets 3 women, not just 3 women, he gets 3 women at once who are perfectly fine with it and just sort of accept it because they all love him so much. And which is, it's narrative, it's fine. Like, I don't think, the way it is written, I don't know.
Robert Jordan doesn't do well writing romance.
Yeah, he doesn't at all. Of the women, only one of them is culturally predisposed to be okay with being in a polygamous situation. The other 2 accept it because they kind of have to, because that's the only way that they can have him. Like, Avienda is the only one who would have been like, yeah, no, this is a normal thing to be, and would have been okay with it regardless. The other 2 feel like they have to. And then there's the fact that, for example, one of his, I don't want to go into 2, but of the 3, one of them fights falling for him as hard as she can because she doesn't want to, but she's fated to. There's this feeling of the 3 women who fall in love with him sort of by force of the pattern, whereas he gets to fall in love. Like, he actually gets to meet people and decide that he likes them and fall in love, but they are pulled towards him against their will. That, at least that's the feeling that I get. And then there's the fact that of the 3 of them, only one of them I feel like actually turns into a relationship. Like, 2 of them are just like,
away from him for long periods of time.
Yeah, and like, he banged them once and then went on with his life, which is, I guess, that would be a perfectly normal thing to do. Like, I wouldn't think less of him if he met a girl, kind of liked her, had sex with her, and then went on. Like, that would be fine. It's weird to me that, like, a character that he sort of kisses a couple of times in book 2 still thinks of themselves as being like committed to him in book 14, even though they've hardly seen them at all since then. Like,
we're very much selling Randall Thor very short here, I think.
Yeah. Like, it's only the romance, and it's like, it's that's it. And as you said, Robert Jordan, I feel like this is, as much as I love these books, romance was not a strong suit of his in writing.
Yeah. I also like, I'm not a fan of like the will they won't they type of stories. Like, CW shows are like, I just stopped watching because I'm just like, I'm done with the will they won't they stories. I just can't stand these things anymore.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the will they won't they, and I've become increasingly annoyed by the I hate him but I really love him, which which happens a lot in these books.
Yeah, and like a lot of times in just like fiction in general, which is interesting.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
I
Like there's the
prefer.
meme. There's the
Oh,
meme of like the romantic comedy, like a realistic romantic comedy would be like, oh, I meet a guy at work and I don't like him. The realistic thing would be, and then I just don't spend a lot of time with him and maybe meet somebody outside of work that I fall in love with. Like but no, in a romantic comedy,
there has to be some conflict.
exactly.
And that's kind of one of the things that in my books, like I don't do the will they won't they, like I
Yeah.
avoid them. I try to have it just be like two mature people like getting together, or at least
Yeah.
like slowly developing a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's what I prefer writing, is just like two best buddies slowly learning to respect each other, or colleagues learning to respect each other and having a relationship. That's
Yeah.
what I prefer doing.
Yeah. I agree. And I also just think it should feel real. Like I said, one of the women who falls for Rand just absolutely despises him or acts like she despises him for such a long period of time, and then suddenly is like, no, it's actually because I love you. And it like that, it doesn't ring true to me at all. Like nothing about that feels real to me at all, because that's not how humans behave. Like humans don't do that. At least
Yeah.
no humans I know. No humans I
Yeah.
know and like would do that.
Yeah,
So,
and she just delights in making him uncomfortable.
yeah.
And it's just like she feeds him a lizard
Yep.
or a snake. She's like,
Yep.
and he's like Agaro was fine, not because of the taste, but because it was a lizard.
Yeah. So,
Um, but ultimately, like Rand, I think has the best arc of the series in terms of what happens to him and what he does.
it is impressive. It's not my personal favorite arc. I think you can guess who my personal favorite arc is.
Oh,
But
of
his arc,
course,
yeah.
of course.
But his arc is impressive. Like yeah, it's amazing.
Of course, I think I know who your favorite arc is.
Yes. There's my girl. There she is.
Yep.
Yeah.
I quite like Nynaeve Almira just as a person,
Hmm.
because she is a funny, and she's not really like defined by her attractiveness.
No. Although she's got big ones. The books make sure to make sure you know. But yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that like most of the guys in Emmons Field are like Nynaeve, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mostly because like they almost see her as like either a big sister or a mom, because she was their babysitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's like suddenly, like I think of it more like just because of our life experience. It's like your teacher, suddenly were to start dating, you'd be like, what? What? That doesn't make any sense. So,
yeah, yeah, and like, but I think like Rand is kind of an interesting. Like I know in kind of our culture, like it's kind of gotten tired of deconstructionist narratives
mhm.
in terms of like because of like feeling your mileage may vary, but like people did not like what happened to Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. And in some ways
Oh, okay.
they didn't like the fact they didn't kind of like the fact that like they like in some cases like they don't like their expectations being subverted.
Mhm.
But I think that this is actually a good deconstructionist story about like what it actually is like to be the chosen one.
Yeah, yeah. I think it definitely, absolutely is. I,
Yeah.
I don't have strong feelings about The Last Jedi, so I don't really. I was trying to even remember what happened. That movie sort of kind of went into my head and out. I was like, oh yeah, okay. But this to me, what happens with Rand is very. Uh, it's yeah, it's a good deconstruction of this trope.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I can't hear you, so I'm not sure if that's.
Sorry, 1 second, I had to mute. Somebody
Okay.
somebody walked into my office.
Okay. No worries. No worries.
Uh, So, but yeah, I think that part of it is just like the fact that like he is basically throughout the series he is a lamb to slaughter, or at least like he is
Yeah.
a man preparing himself to die through most of the series and is trying to harden himself because he believes that that is the best way to face it.
Yeah, and like the idea of being the chosen one, especially in our Western narratives, like this is a very Western narrative. So the chosen one, the Messiah, they're fated to sacrifice themselves for the world. And like usually when you hear the term like, oh, this person has a Messiah complex, or this person thinks they're the savior, that is the idea is that, oh, this person is very full of themselves and they think that they are the most important person in the world. But literally, especially again in our Western narrative, if you are the Messiah, if you are the savior, that means that you are fated for something horrible. And what that would do, aside from all of the magic stuff that is happening in Rand's, like, because we've already said it, so he's a magic user, and we know that the magic use makes men mad. That is happening to him. The fact that he has all this responsibility because the fate of the world is literally on his shoulders, and he, because of that fate, knows that his end is coming. Like that is I don't know. The term Messiah complex, it's a horrifying thing to know about yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically like, and especially for a 20-year-old man.
Yeah.
Like if I knew, like if I had like 2 years to live and I knew that I was probably gonna die horribly, I would be like, dang, I'm gonna run away from this as fast as I can. I'm hoping that I don't have to do this.
Yeah, but then we have this, like, this is one of the most brilliant things I think that Robert Jordan did. The concept of Taviran it was genius, because it's like, okay, do you want to explain what Taviran is? You're the writing expert.
Basically, Taviran is an in-universe plot armor getaway free card.
Yeah, and it's explained so well because it makes sense with the way that the universe is described, like the pattern in the books, so that it doesn't feel like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like convenience. It's like, oh yeah, that's what happens. Because one of the reasons it doesn't feel like convenience is because it's not always good. Like the plot is, the Taviran is trying to get our main characters to where the pattern wants them to go, not to where they want to go. So it's plot armor that, yes, will make sure that they survive something that they probably shouldn't have survived, but it also is going to like make sure that they are in a place even if they don't want to be there.
Yeah. So, or like luck kind of turns on a dime. Like even like weird things will happen around them. Like sometimes people will have like good things happen to them.
Yeah.
Like they'll find like a treasure trove of gold, or or like they'll be saved from a horrible accident, or but also there'll be like weird marriages dissolved, guys running off, lots of marriages happening, weird stuff happen, just strange things.
Yeah, it was such a genius thing. Yeah, it's so frustrating because you can't use it now because he made it and he used it, and if you use it, you're copying him. But it's such a genius thing to have created in his world.
Yeah,
so, yeah. You can be like, I need his character to meet that person, but that person would never come here. Well, Taviran, that person's coming. Like, it's perfect.
Yeah. And the nice thing is it's not just Rand who is Taviran within the story. It is Perrin Ibarra, the man on the left, and Matt Cawthon, the guy on the right.
Yeah.
And these two men are on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of their personality.
So much, yes.
Yeah. So Perrin Ibarra is a blacksmith who eventually finds a girl and is totally loyal to her throughout the series. And he's just a solid, kind of dry, methodical type. Yeah. Matt Cawthon is a womanizing wildfire huckster type.
Impulsive in the extreme. Like, yeah.
It'll be like, all right, I'm feeling my luck today. I'm going to gamble all of this gold on getting some food.
Yep. And yet it's a very weird thing that happens with them, because like Perrin is the loyal, steady, plotting, I'm going to think it through before I do it. And Matt is the impulsive. Let me go here. Oh, wait, there's a shiny thing over there. I want to go there instead. Like he's the ADHD kid, right? But Matt is also if Matt says he's going to be there, he's going to be there. Like absolutely, like he will never break his word. And Perrin sometimes, like Perrin, there are times when Perrin doesn't show up when he's supposed to, because it's interesting. It's a interesting, unpredictable thing that happens with them.
Yeah, and it's interesting that out of all of them, like Matt kind of stays consistently the same.
Yeah,
but he's like fun and funny throughout the series.
Yeah.
Perrin is also fun, but he slowly goes on like a tempering arc.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And it works with the blacksmith analogy, so
yeah, it does. Yep. Extra points.
Whereas Rand is slowly broken down throughout the series and becomes a much harsher and more like not likable guy. Like I would not want to like sit down and like chat with Rand for a long period of time.
Not at all. I feel like he's like shattered and remade. Like that's when you say broken down, like that is very much what happens to him.
Yeah, because he goes from like a kind of usual fantasy protagonist to somebody who is willing to watch as somebody is hanged at his order.
Yeah.
Over the course of the series, and eventually does a couple of really bad things in book 12. They're like,
this kills a bunch of innocent people.
Yeah, he kills a bunch of innocent people just to kill one bad person.
Yeah.
For a moment, like he kind of feels like, did Rand transmigrate brains with Tywin Lannister or something?
Yeah.
And it's such an amazing moment where he just kind of, when he is remade, when he does become the man who he needs to be in order to face the dark one, it's a really amazing epiphany.
That is like, that was such a, I think that's the Gathering Storm, the end of the Gathering Storm. That was, again, I was not online at that time, so when I knew Brandon Sanderson was finishing the series, I thought it was going to be one book. So I got to the end of Gathering Storm and obviously knew like there's going to be more. But it was a weird thing of I'm still satisfied. Like I'm still satisfied with how this book ends.
Yeah, it felt like an amazing victory was won at the end of the Gathering Storm.
Exactly. Yeah.
And especially with like what happens with Egwene. Because like it's finally her coming into her own and finally like really being fully accepted by the institution she loves.
Yeah.
And then I think two of the most interesting female characters in the series are Miranda Madrid and Nynaeve Almira.
Yes.
We've talked a lot about Nynaeve. Let's kind of chat a little bit about Moiraine and how she stands out as kind of something pretty unique in terms of the usual like fantasy mentor types.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say that like Moiraine is very different than a lot of other like wise wizard fantasy mentor archetype characters?
Well, the way I often think of her is I'm going to compare her to my favorite character, but she is Nynaeve's opposite, right? She's the flip side of Nynaeve's coin. So Nynaeve is passion and there's a problem and I have to fix it now. Like there's a problem in front of me and I have to fix it now, which is great. Like that's not a bad thing. Nynaeve, that is fine. Moiraine she's a long view person. She sees the big picture and you need both of those. That's what I mean. Like she's the flip side of Nynaeve's coin. You cannot only be a long view person because if you do that, you will not see the suffering in front of you. But you also can't be I'm only going to deal with the suffering in front of me person because then you're not going to be taking care of the long view. Now, the difference, of course, is that Moiraine is way more mature than Nynaeve. So she can be a long view person who also cares about the suffering because she has learned that she needs both sides. Nynaeve hasn't learned that yet. But I mean, obviously, another one very obvious thing is that she's a woman. That role that she's in is typically taken by a man. She keeps things close to her chest. I keep wanting to use the word cold, and I'm wanting to stop myself from using the word cold because that sounds negative, and I don't mean it in a negative way. But it's like, obviously her analog, or the person people often will compare her to, is Gandalf. And Gandalf is lovable and cuddly and warm, as well as wonderful and magical and powerful. Moraine is not cuddly and warm. Like, she's definitely not. So,
no, Moraine's kind of, I think she's aloof, I think is the best
yeah,
word.
That's the word. Yeah.
Yeah, she's able to be kind, but she doesn't really get emotionally involved with a whole lot of people.
No, because I think, like I said, I think she is thinking long view. She's thinking long term. This is another thing. I didn't actually even talk about it in the video that I made about Nynaeve, but I almost did. It's just that is because it's a blind spot that Nynaeve has, where she doesn't get that the big picture is needed. So she sees Moraine just being like, we have to get there, and I'm really sorry that this inn burnt down while we are getting there. And that's like, and Nynaeve can't get past the fact that the inn burnt down because that's a problem in front of her. And Nynaeve is triage. Nynaeve is fix the problem now. And yeah.
She's the healer archetype versus
exactly.
the courtesan, the courtesan archetype that Moraine is.
Yeah.
Like, or the politician / the asset archetype, the political asset archetype.
Yeah. And they are such a good counterbalance to each other. I think that they are, like, I think that having the two of them together works so well. Like, it's such a good thing. And I mean, I've talked about this, I don't know if it was before we went live or not, but I think it is a huge part of Nynaeve's issue is that she sees Moraine, and Moraine is literally everything that Nynaeve isn't. Like, she's graceful, she's poised, she's calm, she commands authority. And those are things that Nynaeve can't do yet. And so it makes her feel small.
Yeah, and like Nynaeve, like she has to like resort to a baseball bat.
Exactly.
In the beginning.
Like Moraine walks into a room and everybody's like, ooh, what is this woman going to say? And Nynaeve walks in the room and everybody ignores her and she has to beat them over the head. Exactly.
Yeah. Or like I love, I think one of my favorite moments in the book is Tom Maryland's introduction. It says, "What kind of a fly-speck village is this? Yes. I arrive in the middle of the night, and the innkeeper grumbles under his breath about the late hour of my arrival, and he didn't even tell me that he was the mayor." And then I come down and everyone looks at me like I'm his least favorite brother-in-law looking to borrow money. And then some old codger shouts at me about the kind of stories I should tell or not tell. And then a girl child shouts at me, waving a stick in my face.
Yes. Like, that's, yeah. It's a very, I mean, it's a kind of a cliche way to do things. However, that cliche is the wrong word. It's a very common, it's a trope way to do things, to have an outsider describe it, but it's a good way to do it because it works. Like, it gives you're in the world, so you're like, oh yeah, this village, this is wonderful and normal, and then having an outsider be like, no, it's not. And you go, oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, that's the wisdom. Really? Yeah, that pretty little slip of a girl?
Yeah.
She should be winking at the men and then arming people rather than rather than predicting the weather and healing the sick.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, they should not. Rand was secretly happy that Nynaeve was not there to hear that one.
Oh no, that would have caused a bit of a kerfuffle, let's say, to put it mildly.
No. Tom would have a concussion.
Yeah, exactly.
Tom would have a really bad concussion.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think we've actually kind of done a lot of discussing of like a lot of the characters that I wanted to discuss, at least in terms of the like our favorite male characters. Like I put down Perrin Ibarra in terms of especially like his arc. He has a unique arc. I think we haven't really talked about like some of Perrin's abilities and his structure within the story. He's actually an interesting inversion of the usual werewolf trope.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very much so.
Where he has the ability to talk to wolves. And a unique thing about Perrin is that his eyes turn golden after he gets in contact with the wolves. And he's able to telepathically communicate with them. But one of the things he starts being afraid of is that he'll lose his personality to the wolves.
Right.
Initially, he's scared that has something to do with the one power when Elias Machira, who is one of the most blunt and funny characters, I think, because he just like tells it like it is. It's like, that's a good story.
Yeah.
But it's all a lump of lies.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also one interesting thing is there's an actual thing in the Wheel of Time called Tele Runriod, the World of Dreams, and it's this really fascinating dreamscape where we've seen a lot like dreamscapes, like specifically in like a lot of stuff like Stranger Things, Fringe, and a bunch of other places. But the interesting thing is this is a whole like sub-universe to the universe that exists. And wolves are kind of the kings of this particular realm because they're able to manipulate it at their will. And it's a big part of Perrin's arc to both master the wolf inside of himself and also master the world of dreams by proxy.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's very cool. His wolf powers, his arc. I mean, I just love Perrin. I just want to hug him all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say are like the most appealing aspects of like Perrin Ibarra as a character? I love him because he's just a good, solid man in a world of gray.
Yeah, that is definitely something I enjoy. I enjoy his introspection too. Like I like, as you said, he is a polar opposite of Matt, and Matt is not introspective. Matt is like do. Like Perrin is a think and do, but Perrin's more of like a think, do, and Matt is a do. Oh, I should probably thought about that. Like after he does, and I enjoy Matt's scenes. I like him as a person, but Perrin's introspective. Maybe it's because I identify with it. Like he will think and rethink things, and I find that is very relatable to me.
I would concur with that. I really like how Perrin, like, he just kind of likes to think things through, because that's some, and he's slow to anger, which I think is an unusual trait in a fantasy protagonist.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
There's a lot of, and he's such a just good man. I think like out of all of them, I think that Perrin is probably the best man out of all of them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And whereas I think Perrin would be fun to be, but Perrin's like the best person to like be solid friends with, but Matt would probably be the most fun.
So, yeah, most fun to hang out with. Matt would also still be a good friend. Like they are all like, it's
Except
very
for Rand.
weird. Well,
Except for Rand.
During
Except
yeah,
for
there's
Rand
there's a chunk where you wouldn't want to be Rand's friend at all. But that Matt is also really, really loyal. Like Matt will like he will have your back. Matt will always have your back. But so will Perrin. Like I don't know. Perrin's solid. Perrin's lovable. And he's really strong, but he doesn't want to be. That is another thing I find about him that's quite interesting. Like he's this
Yeah.
big, beefy guy who kind of wishes that he was a small guy so that people wouldn't pay attention to him.
And also, like, he doesn't want to feel like he's almost like Superman in a way, where he feels like he's in a world of glass because of his size.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about like our favorite like main characters. Let's chat about the baddies, shall we?
Sure.
So Wheel of Time actually has an interesting thing where the bad guys have very little screen time and don't really conflict with the heroes directly, which I think is a fascinating thing. Like the main bad guy, the Dark One, is locked away for pretty much majority of the series.
Yeah.
But you have the Forsaken, as we see depicted in this particular picture, where we have 13. What happened with the Forsaken is we have 13 of the most powerful magic users or channelers from the previous age that got locked away for 3 millennia and now are allowed to come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the seals are weakening, so they're breaking through.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because they aren't often. They do have a good deal of. Some of them have a great deal of page time. Like we see specifically, we have our good friend Samael, who's he's almost the primary antagonist for 3 of the books, from Shadow Rising to the ending of Crown of Swords, where he's the dude that they're building up to.
Yeah.
Then we have the guy in the center, Baalzamon, who I will not spoil his identity, but he's not quite who you think he is. But he's ultimately he is a psychotic nihilist in a lot of ways. He wants the world to end. He wants things to be devoid of existence. He wants and he also believes the Dark One's going to win eventually, so might as well just make it happen now and end existence. And some of these people are a lot of these people are aspects of the worst of humanity.
Yes.
Ravine is. I think Ravine is kind of Matt if Matt had no scruples.
Oh, it's an interesting way to think about it. I can see that.
Because Ravine is the playboy of the Forsaken, where he likes having a bunch of women all at the same time. But but the problem is he is a man who is unable to control himself and just uses really sneaky magic in order to get women to fall desperately in love with him.
Yeah.
Think of if Jafar was able to wish for the genie, I was able to wish that all women in the world would fall in love with me.
Yeah, and that's Ravine.
Yeah. And then we have Grendel, who is kind of on another end of the spectrum. How about you kind of talk about some of the female Forsaken and why they're interesting, why they.
What I find interesting about Grendel, I think, is because we know her background. So she was during the Age of Legends. She was, and I can never pronounce this word, an ascetic.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, where she sort of eschewed all worldly pleasure and was only about helping and healing, especially mental illness, I think. And then she shifts that and becomes the exact opposite. She becomes like a hedonist, where it's just all pleasure she wants, and she'll take it and she doesn't care what the consequences. She is a master of using compulsion, and she will use it often I think the expression is like a hammer. She will completely take over a person's personality and make them do nothing but worship her. but she can also be incredibly subtle with it. I love that she uses her hedonism as a shield for her intelligence. Like, people don't think she's scheming and plotting that much because they just see her indulging in every possible whim. So they don't think that she could possibly have a subtle plan behind that.
They dismiss her as kind of the bubbly popular girl type.
Kind of, yeah. It's genius, and that, I mean, that's part of what I like about her, is she is incredibly intelligent. She's like, I just want to be clear, she's evil. She is also probably raping and killing a lot of people. Like, she's a very bad person, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I do know that, like, it's basically like date rape. Like, she's date raping so many people.
Yeah, she's compulsing them and making them have sex with her, probably. Like, it's never, like, because it's not Game of Thrones, they aren't saying she's compulsing them and having sex with them. For sure, no. She's compulsing them implied. Yeah. So.
And then we have, I think with Samael, he's kind of an interesting, like, foil to Grendel in a lot of ways, because he's a brutal utilitarian.
Yeah.
And he's the military man. Like, whereas Ravine is like the Ravine and Demon Dread in the back are the military guy, whereas Demon Dread and Samael are the military guys. Ravine is the politician, and he loves manipulating people. Yeah. Where it seems as though Demon Dread is the best general out of the Forsaken, in terms of he was almost is kind of the story of Demon Dread's life. And it's kind of sad that he doesn't get more page time. And there's kind of a weird in the books, there's actually a character by the name of Mazrim Taim.
Yeah.
And for a long time, there seemed like there was a theory that Taim and Demon Dread were one and the same.
Yes. I think actually it's even been confirmed that was the original plan.
Yeah. But then in Winter's Heart, it was confirmed, no, they're two different people.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's just a kind of it's really interesting that kind of like you see kind of that like discovery writer aspect of this, even though Robert Jordan had like a lot of this written out and planned, very likely. There were still kind of things that he decided to change, and thankfully, like, he had been vague enough in terms of how he had set it up that he was able to make it so that it didn't necessarily like not make sense if I'm being not obtuse in terms of my statement.
No, I think I understand what you mean.
Yeah. But we also have kind of Cimarog, who's Cimarog is scary. I think out of all of them, she is the most terrifying of all the Forsaken.
Cimarog is like Jaws, I think. I think of her because you don't see her nearly enough. I want to see her more, but I wonder if we saw her more, if she would be as scary, because she is terrifying. This woman is so scary.
Yeah, honestly, I would love Gina Torres from Firefly to play.
Cimarog. I could see that. I could see that.
Because she's very tall, which is a characteristic of Cimarog, though you can kind of do neat little trickery there. But it's interesting that she is like legitimately scary in terms of like she's a horrifying sadist.
Yeah.
To the point where like people like she would like torture her. She was a doctor in the Age of Legends, but she loved like extracting a little bit of pain out of her victims, her patients.
Her patients / victims.
And it got to the point where people were like, you are either being severed from using magic, or the one power, or you are going to have to be bound to this thing called an oath rod that will make it so that you will not be able to use to hurt another human being.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, like, there's a subtle hint there that when she says like bound to never know her pleasures and also knowing when the end of her life was going to be,
Yep.
which is an
Which
interesting
is-
thing. Oh, go for it.
Oh no, I want to hear what you wanted to say first. Go ahead.
Oh, it also kind of plays into the fact that with the Aes Sedai are bound by a thing called the Three Oaths, where they have this oath rod that they swear, I will never say a word that is not true. I will never use the power as a weapon against anything other than Shadowspawn, except in the defense of myself, a fellow Aes Sedai, or a warder, or my warder.
Yeah.
And I will never make a weapon from one man to kill another.
Yeah.
And because of that, the lifespan of Aes Sedai is severely limited.
Yes, yeah.
They
are binding themselves with something that essentially was designed as a punishment.
Mm-hmm. And so now, like, the usual average lifespan of an Aes Sedai is like 300 years on average. Whereas in like the Age of Legends, you could live to about like 600, like twice that.
Yeah.
And there are even like runaways from the tower called the Kin that you see in Book 7 that have lived for roughly like 600 years or 400 years. And it shocks the Aes Sedai because it's just like nobody has lived this long. And that is because they're using this oath rod.
Yeah, they don't understand. They're using artifacts from an era that they don't understand anymore.
Yep. It's very much like almost like medieval times using a Roman aqueduct.
Yeah.
And then I think like out of the Forsaken, the most fascinating of them all, I think it's Demandred, because he wanted to be the champion. He wanted to be the dragon. He wanted, and he's like almost there. He was born a day after Lews Therin Telamon. He was almost as honored as Lews Therin.
Yeah.
He was almost as good a swordsman. But he was always claims that he was the better tactician.
But I mean, he's not. Because we see that in the end.
Yes. Where in the end, he's baited by his bitterness.
Yes.
And that's ultimately like the thing about all of the Forsaken is that they're bitter in some way. Like Missana wanted to be a teacher, or a researcher, but then she got relegated to being a teacher.
I know her arc just cracks me up. Her reasoning for becoming a Forsaken makes me laugh. Oh, she wanted tenure and didn't get it, so she decided to serve Satan. Like, it's so weird. It's so weird.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah. She's like she wanted to, or like she wanted to go like abroad and research some interesting things, and then it's just like no.
It's like well, screw you. I'm gonna go serve Satan now. Like, so weird.
Which is interesting. Like Lanfear is kind of similar in terms of she's like, oh wow, my boyfriend broke up with me. It's basically like if the most like powerful and like promising man in the whole world is her boyfriend. And then he broke up with her and married somebody else. Because she is very much the crazy ex-girlfriend type in the series, and she's trying really hard to get back with the reincarnation of her lost love, or love in air quotes. It's more obsession.
Very much so.
Because she doesn't, and she's constantly pushing him under the guise of a pseudonym. And she wants to push him to be greatness, but the problem is she is not a good manipulator.
No, she also doesn't understand that, like, he is the reincarnation of her ex, but he's not exactly her ex, and she doesn't get that. Like, she keeps trying to make him be somebody that he isn't.
And it's I think a lot of it is just like he's a sheep herder and she's a scientist from a previous age.
Yeah.
They're very incompatible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But then we have somebody who's a little bit more interesting in terms of her function, the plot. That is Elida Doavrini Arroyhan.
Mm-hmm.
She is an antagonist for much of the series to Egwene, and passingly to Rand in book
Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
Um,
What I love about Elida, like I mean, obviously she's an antagonist. I don't love her, but what I love about her is she is on the side of the light. Like she wants to do good. She wants to help. She wants to fight for the good cause. She's just wrong about everything. Like
yeah. She goes pretty nuts
yeah,
towards the latter end of the series.
yeah. But her
She
motivations are never like her
she's
motivation is to help. Like
yeah,
not help individuals, help the world. But
yeah.
yeah, it's
Like
so
she's kind of petty and malicious in a lot of
yes.
ways, but she does, and she's kind of like the White Cloaks. For those of you who have not seen the series, watched the series, read the series.
Yes,
I
yes.
keep Freudian slip, especially now that the TV series is coming up. Which woot woot.
Exactly.
um, uh, but with the White Cloaks, we see like interesting gradations of antagonists throughout the world of Wheel of Time. Like we see these religious zealots called the White Cloaks or the Children of the Light.
Yes.
And they are very much religious zealots who are bound. They're kind of witch hunters in a way. They're like the Salem witch hunters got swords
Yeah.
and a organized military force that is present throughout all of the major kingdoms.
Yeah.
And with that, it's kind of, and they have their own Spanish Inquisition type organization.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to contrast these two because they both of these people hate each other. Like
Yeah.
Elida hates the White Cloaks because the White Cloaks kill Aes'Sedai, and the White Cloaks hate Aes'Sedai because they believe the One Power broke the world and it's blasphemy for the human beings to touch it.
Yeah. Like it's much harder to fight against like the Darkfriends know they're serving the Dark One, right? Like they know that they are fighting against like she's and the White Cloaks are ostensibly in their minds. They are fighting evil. So it's very hard to counteract that. Like just in a conversation, obviously you can just physically punch them or whatever, but just in a no, like you're on the wrong side. But they're technically they're on the right side. They're just on the wrong side of the right side. I don't know how to. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's actually a very good way of putting it. Kind of as opposed to like Game of Thrones, where it's like Varys and Littlefinger are on opposite sides of the bad side in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Where they're willing to do both were willing to do pretty bad things, especially in the books. Varys like is responsible for some really dark stuff happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Littlefinger is far worse of a psychopath in the books.
Yes. Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, he is far worse.
Wow. Okay.
But this is the Wheel of Time show, and we'll
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
and then we have somebody who's just bad. Here we have Podon Fane, who is present in the first book. He's the central antagonist of the second book and the fourth book, or at least he is a sub-antagonist specifically for Perion.
Okay, yeah.
And then he fades away for a while, which is very interesting. And then he just kind of comes out of nowhere at the end.
Yeah.
Like, I am intrigued to see where Robert Jordan would have done with Fane if he had been able to live longer.
And finish the books himself. Yeah. Fane is such an interesting. He's like a third thing, right? You got the light, you got Rand and the armies of the light, and you got the dark one, and then you've got Fane, who is a dark friend, but he's also something else, and he's a third thing. He has like the evil from Eredhall in him, which Eredhall was like the evil that ate that city, that ate Shadar Logoth, was not initially evil. It was good turned bad. And so he's got that in him. It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it was originally like the victory of the light is everything was the battle cry of the people of Ardhall, while their deeds actively abandon the light, is how Moraine puts it.
Yes. Yes.
And in many respects, like, he is probably the source of a lot of contention in terms of Elida and the White Cloaks against the main three.
Mm-hmm.
Because he chats with both of them.
Yeah.
And because he is an agent of chaos. He's able to use this magic to stir up contention and terror and bad feelings with each other.
Yeah. He something about him corrupts people that are around him. And, yeah.
Yeah, and it's so interesting of a character, and I'm fascinated to see what they will do with him with this series, especially since it's going to be easier to work with the show as in terms of an outline, because now they have the completed books.
Yeah.
As opposed to Game of Thrones, which kind of rushed the fourth and fifth books into one season.
Which season was that?
Season 5.
Okay.
Yeah, they kind of imagine if they condensed Gathering Storm and Towers of Midnight into one 10-episode series.
Right.
And then for the rest, for seasons 6 through 8, it was completely off book.
Yeah. It's good to like I said, I haven't said to you, but I've said to many people, I knowing that there is an end. Obviously they're going to make changes in the series, but that they have a guideline gives me a lot of confidence in what the show's going to be like. Although, to be like, my personal thought is just the show isn't canon. The show is going to be fun, but it's not canon. So if things change, I'm not gonna. Hopefully, I'm not gonna cry about it. Yeah.
It's authorized fan fiction by the author's editor,
exactly.
/wife.
Exactly.
And thankfully, it's got Brandon Sanderson consulting on scripts, and so I feel like it will be. I think that the fan and Rafe Judkins seems like he is a super mega fan himself.
He definitely does.
Yeah, I am interested to see how the changes will happen, and I really want to see these actors develop and grow to the mega stars that now Kit Harington and Emilia Clarke are because of this show.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I'm especially excited to see the actor for Tom.
Oh yeah.
Because I saw him on Last Kingdom, and he's in season 2, and he's the antagonist of the first half of season 2.
Okay.
He's great.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. And I actually hope that they do something like what they did with The Last Kingdom, where they were able to condense 2 books per season.
Okay.
But they were managed.
I didn't know it was a book series. Okay.
Yeah, it's a book series based on Bernard Cornwell's The Second Chronicles, but the author likes it so much he changed the name to Last Kingdom.
Wow. Okay. That's a good endorsement.
Yeah, even George R. R. Martin, he was actually asked, what do you think of Game of Thrones? And he's like, I don't have time for TV. And 2 days later, he tweeted out, oh, wasn't the finale of Last Kingdom amazing?
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he loves that series, and a lot of people do as well. So we're kind of we're coming up on we've reached the 2 hour mark.
Okay.
So let's we're kind of going to go into full spoilers now. For any of you who have not read The Wheel of Time or want to eventually, please click away, read the 14-book series, come back in a year, and we'll watch the video. But we'll kind of let's discuss like what are like top. Let's say what our like favorite characters are, and our favorite moments
Okay.
out of the series are.
All right. Well, there should be no surprise here. Favorite character, Nynaeve. So, followed by, for me, it would be Perrin and Matt. And Perrin and Matt, very, like, they alternate. Like, I would say probably Perrin is number 2, and Matt is, like, number 2.1. Like, I like them both almost equally, but Perrin just sort of edges them out. And then Moraine, if I was saying my top 5, I put Rand in there, but Rand is like it's like Nynaeve 1, long shot, and then 2 and 3 very, very close to each other, 4 very close to 2 and 3, and then 5 is a bit down. And it's not that I find I like Rand, but he is not in my, like, if I'm thinking of favorite characters, he's not one of the ones that comes to mind.
He's definitely a strong flavor, is what I would say about Rand. I would very similarly agree, and I would kind of add a couple of honorable mentions in terms of Lanfear.
Yeah, I like Lanfear.
Yeah, Lanfear. I'm a big fan of. I love Rodolai Teralda. We haven't mentioned him, but I love the Little Wolf.
Yeah.
The Little Wolf is one of the best characters ever. He is basically it's basically if Robb Stark grew to be an old man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it's like when I was talking favorite characters, I have to admit, I'm talking about the characters that I like as people the most, not as characters. So
that's
characters,
totally fair.
Yeah. Because as characters, there are like people that I would hate that are up higher on. Like, I think Elida is a fascinating character. I love being in her head, but I hate her. I hate her so much.
Oh dear. Oh, this is so funny.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. I can go. What?
Please explain, Dunkel Zan.
What's happening?
I think that was kind of like in reference to my come back in a year. You can come back.
Yeah.
So
okay,
that's nice. So what are like your top 5? So let's kind of Archmage. I didn't know you liked Wheel of Time. Archmage, she was like, she said,
yeah.
So yeah, I would totally agree.
There's like, I honestly think I love these books. I agree with you. I love these books. However, there is if that storyline had been, because I'm assuming you're talking about the extended storyline with her capture. If it had been much shorter, I think it would have been okay. But it went on for so long.
Yeah. It was like, I hope that they condense Winter's. I hope that they kind of condense Winter's Heart, Towers of Midnight, and Winter's Heart, Crossroads of Twilight, and Knife of Dreams into 2 seasons.
Yeah,
I
think condense it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I do agree with you, Archmage, that Min is definitely somebody I think I would like in real life, because she's a sweet girl and she's also a bookworm.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think I would like her. Like of all of actually Rand's ladies, I think I would like them all.
Yeah, because they're very pleasant. They're very pleasant, which is nice.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they're a bit cagey, like when like they're alone with each other.
a little bit. But yes.
Yeah. Well, mostly it's like they're cagey with Nynaeve.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you be? As much as I love her, wouldn't you be?
Yeah, she probably would. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think let's now we can kind of now that we've discussed like our favorite characters and like why we like them. What would you say are like your favorite moments? Like kind of going from like your like number 5 to your top moment.
Okay. Kind of wish I'd thought about this beforehand because I put them in
apologize.
order. No, it's okay because you're saying top 5, and the first one that comes to mind is probably my favorite moment, but I have to say it last. Ooh. Okay, you go first. Let me think.
Okay, so 5 would be Dumai's Wells would be one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Asha'Man kill moment.
Oh yeah, that's a good moment
because it's a triumph, but it's also just like, oh dear.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately like a victory for the bad guys in the long term, even though it's because it's the Dragon Reborn has basically like part of himself is broken and his trust for and empathy is broken.
Yeah.
For specific people.
Yeah.
I think Perion chopping off the hand of the Aes'Sedai is a very good moment.
Yeah.
I think the whole 200 pages of the last battle is amazing.
Yeah.
But the moment with Lan where he says, "I didn't come here to win. I came here to kill you."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that moment so much.
It is so good.
And then the moment where let me think. I know what my first one is. I think like I think my second favorite is the moment where Rand balefires Cimarog.
Oh, okay.
And Elsa Penfell and uses the true power for the first time. And then tied to that is the moment at the end of the Gathering Storm. My favorite moment in the Wheel of Time is when Rand's epiphany happens.
Okay.
Where he realizes this is why we fight. Combined with the Tam Thor talking to moment.
Okay. Yeah.
Where he understands, oh, this is why I fight. Because maybe there's a chance that I can redeem myself for my mistakes.
Yeah. Oh, those are good. Okay. So I've just quickly scrolled out a list of 5 moments. If you ask me this tomorrow, I might have completely different things on my list, just so you know.
That's totally fine. I'll just nail you to the wall for this moment in time.
Okay. All right. So let's see. I'll start with when Rand balefires Matron's Barrow. And I forget what it is. It's not a good moment. It is a horrifying moment.
It's Gathering Storm, yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's just killed probably hundreds of people, most of whom are probably not Darkfriends, in fact were victims of a Darkfriend. And it is horrifying, and it just shows you the depths of hardness that he has put himself in. Like, it's a goosebump moment. Like, it's so bad.
Spine-tingling. It's spine-tinglingly horrifying.
Completely is. And then I would say a moment I find weirdly, oddly satisfying is the end of, it's the book the third book, where everybody's going to Tyr. It's the battle. It's the battle for the stone. I find it so satisfying how everything comes together, and they weren't intending to. Like, Matt was not trying to get into the stone to help Rand. He was going in there to rescue the women, and the women weren't there to help. Like, everybody is there for different reasons, and yet they all end up at the same time. It's obviously a Taviran thing, but it's like, it works. It's like those videos, those oddly satisfying videos of like the final piece in a puzzle slaps together and you see the picture. Like it's, even though you know that they're going to finish the puzzle, it's still when they finally click that final piece and you're like, oh, yes, that's what that moment feels like to me. It's just like, oh, yes, this is so good. This is so good.
Yeah, it's amazingly satisfying where
Yeah.
it kind of just that, especially like the moment where he sees his calendar is a wonderful
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. Another one I would put on there is when Perrin makes the hammer.
Yes,
I love that moment. It's a scene that I think shows what you can do in a series like this, because I don't think that moment would feel good if the books were like 3 books. But because it's been extended for so long, it feels like it's the first time, for example, a magical weapon has been made in thousands of years, at least by the light side. It's one of the first things that we see in world that men and women do together. And it's like the culmination of Perrin's storyline for so many books. Like it's just all these things come together to make this moment feel like the world is healing itself. At least that's part of it for me. Like this is a healing of all the fractures that have happened in this beautiful moment. Oh, it's fantastic.
Like when it kind of starts with the healing of the taint in Winter's Heart, and it kind of comes to a head in Towers of Midnight.
Yeah. And then, okay, number 2, this one would always be on my list because it's my girl. But when Nynaeve and Moghedien have that battle in the palace, and Nynaeve realizes that she's as strong as Moghedien, it's fantastic. I am terrified and excited to see this in the series because I don't know how they'll show it, because it's literally just them standing and looking at each other because they're doing all of it in their, like with the magic, with weaves and stuff. But it's just 2 women standing in a room looking at each other. But it's awesome. It's so awesome. It's like Nynaeve levels up. She like, it's great. And then I love how she wins. She wins by throwing something in Moghedien's face. It's fantastic. It's so good.
Neph Champion. This is awesome. And something that I'm hoping to do when the Wheel of Time series comes out is to have a weekly podcast show about it with you guys. What do you think?
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Okay. My number 1 moment. Let me get to my number 1 moment.
Yeah, go for it. Sorry, I had to do that.
That's all right. No, I saw the comment. Yeah, that's good. When Nynaeve heals Loghain.
Oh, yes.
It's so beautiful. I love everything about it because she does it by accident. She's just trying. And it's like, I love it because it's part of Nynaeve's character is there's a wound and I'm going to try and fix it. And in the books you see, people have been telling her, like, don't, like, why are you trying to fix it? Nobody can do that. You can't. And you see this stubbornness in Nynaeve of, no, there's a wound and I am a healer. Let me try. Like, it can't hurt him if I try. Just let me try and fix it. And she does it by accident, which is fantastic. And then the moment after it, like I cry every time when she heals Swan and Leanne, and it's beautiful. Everything about the scene just brings me to tears and goosebumps. I love it. It's fantastic. Okay.
It's a horrible injustice that is finally being righted. All right. Oh, Archmage. Nice. Okay. I will have to have you and Neph Champion on the show for that one. And hopefully we'll be able to kind of convene again, because this seems like it would be something good that would be like really great to do once the series kind of gets rolling. Yeah. Do you think they'll release weekly, or do you think they'll drop it all at once?
I mean, I'm hoping for weekly. I just saw them announce for Amazon that for The Boys, what they're going to do is drop the second season 3 episodes at once and then do it weekly, which is what Apple does for all of their series. They drop 3 and then go weekly. I think that's a good sign that maybe they're moving towards a weekly release. I mean, that, obviously, my opinion, I want a weekly release because I'm a content creator and I want to be able to review the episodes. So, but also, I think a weekly release is just better for a show. It stays in people's minds longer if it's if it lasts longer. Like I watched all of what was that show? Stranger Things. I watched all of Stranger Things in a night, and it was great when I enjoyed it. But like that was a night of my life, and I forgot about it after it was done. Whereas if I'm watching a show for it's 8 episodes or 9 episodes, so that's going to be 2.5 months of my life, I'm going to remember that show more. So.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, and that's a major reason why Game of Thrones was good, was because it was a water cooler show.
Yeah.
Was the how I think Nerdrotic puts it.
Yeah. You can't do water
I am very
cooler
excited
for
weekly.
Yeah.
You have to be like able to like chat about it with your friends.
Yes.
Say, okay, here's something cool that we have to talk about. Like, wasn't that a little bit awesome where where like Rand was able to finally use the one power, or what was that thing about, like little theorization stuff?
Yes, that's like, you need to give people time to guess, because that's what makes it interesting. I mean, obviously for those of us who've read the books, there'll be a different sort of guessing, but if you just like give it the answer, then the next episode it's not as interesting.
I agree, especially since like we have the like it's so nice that they have the source material.
Yeah, it's good. I'm so excited. Again, I think the way you put it is great, that they give it as fan fiction. That's great. So.
Yeah, where it's authorized fan fiction.
Yeah.
I am very intrigued to see. So I think we're probably gonna wind down.
Sure.
So I actually was thinking, like, I actually have a book that I am writing, or well, I finished.
Okay.
I took a lot of I thought a lot about like Wheel of Time when I was reading. I was just like, there's so much things about like Wheel of Time that I love, but also I wish there were some elements.
Yeah.
And I really thought that like the true power was something that wasn't delved into as much as I wanted it to be.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Like in a book series that is as long as The Wheel of Time, there are elements that we wish we had more information about. How it, like, that's how deep this world is. Yeah.
And so one of the things that I did, like, it's kind of bad, but I thought of what would happen in a post Wheel of Time, in a several thousand years post Wheel of Time world, and asked, what if the Dark One got shattered into a million pieces, and the true power started being born in normal people, just like the one power is.
Yeah.
And then the person who shattered him gets reincarnated, and the Dark One turns them into a Forsaken in order to make them immortal, so he can torture them forever. So they have to live with how just live seeing their friends and relatives slowly die.
Yeah, that is dark. That is dark. Wow.
And it's kind of it starts initially with like a snatching of the people in there. Kind of imagine like the Shan Chan raid early on, where basically the world is kind of ruled over by the Forsaken. Each Forsaken has their own little territory that they roam. Right, and there's little pockets to the north where people aren't there. But I think, let me find a specific moment. I think towards the middle. And I think it's basically like, let me kind of find the first time that Rayla Altharin kind of, I like the structure, like in terms of the 3-person band. And so I just gender flipped all of the roles of Matt, Rand, and Perrin, and changed them up quite a bit, where Kotara Abors, which I think if you notice that I use the name of Asha'Man, the bad Asha'Man for that one. Um,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then uh, and then she's a bruiser as opposed to Perrin, and she's kind of not very like socially aware, and is often paired with actually a relatively refined fighter, and so it's a
Okay.
weird combination. But basically, this place is like farmatting, where magic is not able to be used or able to like enter, and so it's been isolated for centuries.
Okay.
So now the device gets turned off by Ja'ana, one of the Forsaken in this universe.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out like an alternative word for chosen because that's kind of rippy offy.
Okay.
But I'll just kind of read a little section. Basically, what's happening: an attack is happening by the bad guys. They're burning the uh, they're capturing people who have the latent ability to use magic that just haven't been able to because of the place that they live in.
Mhm.
So this is what happens. Rayla heard the sounds of commotion from further up the street. She glanced at the window and saw several men in unfamiliar uniforms marching down the line on the trees lining the roadway. They wore steel armor lacquered a deep black with a red skull emblazoned across the breastplate. Green bands were wrapped around their arms, each with an intricate Triskelion symbol sewn into the cloth. She had never seen that kind of armor. Alarm bells began ringing throughout the city, alerting her that these men weren't friendly. As soon as the bell sounded, the men broke ranks and several threw torches into various buildings, setting them ablaze in a matter of seconds. Rayla took only a few seconds to leap into the hall before a torch burst into the window and landed on her bed, igniting in a quarter of a second. "Dad!" she yelled, rushing into the adjacent room and slamming a fist against the door. "Come on, we have to get out of here!" Silence. Then she saw it. Smoke, black and foul smoking, trickling under the door. Thinking quickly, Rayla pushed back into her room, holding her sleeve over her mouth and grabbing the coat rack. With a strength born of desperation, Rayla slammed her improvised battering ram into the door, shattering the lock after a series of blows. The door flew open, revealing a room filled with smoke. "Dad!" she yelled, waving a hand in front of her face, trying to clear some of the smoke away. Her eyes watered as she glanced around, trying to find him. Eventually, after stumbling around, searching for her father, her foot knocked against something bony. Bram was on the floor, unconscious, clearly close to asphyxiation. Quickly, Rayla reached down and slung his arm over her shoulders. "Come on!" she coughed, pulling him out of the room and into the hallway. People were screaming all around them, running toward, or, or screaming all around them, running toward the stairs, trying to escape the rapidly spreading flames. Smoke billowing around her, Rayla pulled her father along with her as she stumbled her way down toward the stairs. Just as she and the other guests entered the relatively unscathed common room, a full squad of crossbowmen burst into the room. They were led by a man and woman wearing green and silver clothes with two pins in the shape of a skull and serpent attached to their collars, their lack of armor making them stand out. The male source user's clothes was made from rich silk. His boots were the finest leather. Contemptuously, the dark-haired man looked around, head slightly cocked, almost like a sculptor examining a piece of rock that needed to be broken in order to get what he wanted out of it. He had a few tinges of gray in his hair, though he had no lines on his face. A sword was at his side, a utilitarian weapon with a black wolf-head pommel. Despite his fine, almost floppy clothes, he clearly knew how to use that sword. However, considering who he was, that sword was probably the least of his weapons. "Do not be afraid," the woman said firmly. "You will be granted an opportunity. Join us and live. Defy us." She trailed off meaningfully. The man raised his hand and created a fireball over his palm. "All of the men in the room step forward," he commanded. "Now." The woman simply walked toward the crowd, glancing at each of the women in the room. As she did, she pointed at 6 of the women in the crowd, cowering before the 2 Sorovs. Rayla wasn't one of them. "Ignore them. They can't use the source." The man blinked. "That leaves..." His mouth moved as he quietly counted 8. that can use the source. Rayla flinched back. No, she thought. Impossible. The woman motioned to the soldiers. Take them. Pay special attention to that one. She pointed to Rayla. She's strong. Very strong. She'll make a fine addition to the Black Hand. No! Rayla backed away, holding her father close. Please, it's not true. I can't. Silence, child. The woman said quietly but firmly. You'll have to learn respect for a full Ashlar. At least until you're trained. Get away from me! Rayla tried not to look at the frightened looks in the eyes of the people staring at her. She pushed backward. You're lying! Child. The woman sighed. What I know. I know. My name is Bayora Ul, and you will be my apprentice. She smiled slightly. I look forward to seeing you become Ashlar eventually. I'll never come with you! Rayla screamed, taking a firmer grip on her father and making a run for it. Just as she was about to throw herself out a window, a wall of flame appeared in front of her, sparking from nothing to prevent her from escaping. The woman, Bayora, grinned, eyes sparkling. You have spirit, child, she flicks her hand. Gedwin, test them in quickly and take the talented with us. Yes, Bayora. The male Sora of Gedwin created a series of fireballs and sent them gliding toward the huddling men. They tried looking away, even closing their eyes, but invisible hands seemed to grab their heads and turn them toward their fireballs. The same invisible fingers pulling their eyes open. For full minutes they stood frozen still, unable to move. Eventually, Gedwin dismissed the fireballs and pointed towards 6 men. Instantly, they were lifted in the air and pulled forward with ethereal arms. I'm not sure how strong these men can be, he remarked, but they can use the source. Everyone else in the room backed away from the Soras the Soras had chosen as an out, expressions of horrified terror on their faces. Bayora motioned the 7 other women that she had chosen and pulled them out of the crowd with the same invisible prods. We'll need a portal to get us out of here, she remarked. These will have to be turned quickly. I doubt we can force them to join us without thoroughly breaking them. She turned toward Rayla. You will have to be turned first, she remarked. It's not going to be pleasant, but you'll thank us once it's done. She reached out her hand, and Rayla felt something touch her brain. No! The scream inside her head wasn't her own. Rayla dropped her father to the ground. Screaming, she felt her knee clutching her head as something forced channels within her brain she hadn't known were there to abruptly rip open. Instantly, she could see 3 sources of light inside her brain, one blue, one green, one a bright, fiery red. The voice inside her head opened herself up to the blue light, which instantly filled with her mind with a high-pitched lyrical music. It wove a black blast of fire. It formed a red energy lines at Gedwin, who leaped backward and sliced the fireball out of the air with his own power. Somehow she could see how he formed it, green and red flows merging together into a knife-like construct. Whatever it was had awakened something in her mind and snapped some sort of block formed of golden energy around the man. There was resistance, as if she were pushing against something invisible. However, she adjusted the shape, sharpening the construct to a razor edge. It sliced through whatever was stopping her, cutting through something within the Sora up. Eyes bulging, Gedwin screamed and dropped to his knees, clutching his head in both hands. Bayora stared at the man, looking horrified. Then she attacked. Her own block construct formed in an instant, shooting toward Rayla. Pathetic, the voice said quietly, forming 3 distinct constructs. The first sliced through the block, the second formed into a rain of fiery ribbons toward the enemy, but the third was changed in a way that made it vaguely translucent to Rayla's eyes. Reacting quickly, Bayora sliced the ribbons out of the air. Only her knife construct was formed from blue and white energy. Then the third construct was unleashed. A line of red light bursting close to Bayora. The woman turned, somewhat surprised, then screamed as the light exploded upward in a rapidly expanding pillar of flame, vaporizing the woman in an instant. Rayla tried to wrestle whatever it was as the taking control of her, but the thing refused to relent. The crossbowmen fired into the crowd, but Rayla destroyed the bolts with bursts of fire. Even the heads melted in the abrupt, violent heat. Then the voice turned its attention toward the crossbowmen. They only had enough time to turn to start hasty retreat before red and green lines of power shot from her hands. Instantly, the men exploded in a haze of blood and flesh. Just exploded. Rayla gagged and emptied her stomach at the horrified sight of the men lying in pieces on the ground, ichor spreading from their mangled bodies. Why can't I move? The voice screamed in her head. I have to help, to save these people. No, Rayla whispered. Stop this. What you're doing is evil. The voice paused, then vanished, and her connection to blue light abruptly released. Breath coming in and out rapidly, she looked around at the other people. The arbitrarily selected men were nursing their necks, and the women just looked shell-shocked. Everyone else was staring at her with horrified expressions on their faces. The worst was her father. He looked up at her from where she dropped him, his eyes displaying disgust and revulsion, and behind that, terror. No, she whispered, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. Her voice rose to a yell, it wasn't me. She turned and ran out of the building, into the chaotic city beyond.
Oh, wow. That's intense. My goodness. Okay. Wow. So this is like, is this happening in this world, but with the true power?
This
but
is
it's like yeah. Okay.
So this is kind of she's using basically the idea that I came up with to kind of differentiate it from Wheel of Time is each of the three powers is
that's what I was going to ask you. Okay.
Yeah, are represented by a different kind of music.
Okay.
And she basically uses Sidar, which I call Isissa.
Mm-hmm.
And she is interesting because the person she was reincarnated from was in connection with a male source user.
Okay.
But she accidentally ripped his ability to use Sidene or Cyrus out of him.
Wow. Okay.
So she has all three powers.
Damn. Okay.
And she basically this is not the moment where she uses Iran, which is the true power, which is represented by a staccato, dissonant music, as opposed to bright lyrical or bass and bassy.
Mm-hmm.
I'll eventually do that segment before it's published in a month or two.
Okay.
But that's Rayla using using her powers for the first time. And
yeah.
And she knows what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's the worst part of it for her, is because she doesn't get a buffer.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what happens is she has the person she's reincarnated like in her head, but she's completely sane. And she acts as her mentor.
Okay. Okay, that's fascinating. Wow, that was awesome.
Yeah. And the best part is, like, this person's an atheist who is forced to confront is a refined scientist who's like, wait, you don't even know what a university is?
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But yeah, that is Storm of Shadows, which should be coming out next month I hope the end of next month is my plan for that book. But I have to thank you all for spending some time to chat about my personal favorite book series of all time. And thank you to my guest, Jen of Lezbi Nerdy. Would you pimp your channel?
Sure. Yes, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Lezbi Nerdy, spelled like you see here, Lez. I'm sorry, I'm Canadian. Lezbi space nerdy, and yeah, just got videos about Wheel of Time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she does excellent work. She does a very good job of analyzing the characters and bringing in a very new, fresh perspective to this series that I would never have considered on my own. So I put a link to her channel in the description. If you had 2 to 3 videos of yours that you've made, which would you say you're the most proud of?
Well, the one that I wanted to, like, the reason I made the channel in the first place was to put up my video about Nynaeve. So that's one that I would say watch because it is the reason my channel exists in the first place. And the one about Fail, I think, is pretty good. And then I kind of like my last one because I don't know about you, but my first video I already hate because I wish that I could fix it and do it better. But I'm getting better at editing and stuff. So my most recent video, which is just about post things that might happen in the world after the end of the books. It's just, small little theories. Plus I have a cute little ad in there, like a commercial I made. So
Oh, nice. I will
Yeah.
definitely take a look at it.
Yeah.
Neph Champion, I want this book.
Nice.
Don't worry. It will be coming out in a month, and I think I will read another segment of it in tomorrow's our author shout out stream. Because tomorrow what I'm doing at 1 is I'm having a time where anybody who's a writer in my Discord has the opportunity to come onto a stream where they can read out their work, get feedback, and basically just say what they were, just show some of their what they're passionate about. And I think I'm going to pick the part where Rayla uses the Iran for the first time in the story. Or well, I'll actually use I think I'm going to do that one. I think that will be a good moment to read out. But I am very excited. My planned streams for this coming week are tomorrow. I will be streaming from 1 to 3. It's first come, first served, but I currently have a schedule of first will be Agent Yokai 0, then Neph Champion, then Hex Harper, then Drake the Duelist will be the people who are reading first. And then I think I said Hex Harper, yeah. I think I did.
I think so.
That will be the current schedule of people on there, and I will put that in the live stream announcements on the Discord. And anybody who has not joined my Discord, the link is in the description below. Please join me. I would love to just chat with you and interact with you as much as I can. So thank you all. We'll also be for that. I'm also going to be doing a stream at 3 Eastern Standard Time on Monday, where I'm going to be chatting with Dr. Crow and helping him out with his book. Then on Tuesday, me and my friends will be covering a video entitled David Benioff Thinks Brown Women Are Hot.
Oh, God. Okay.
It is a documentary by Dragon Demands examining both David Benioff's comments, his writing his books, and his writing on the Game of Thrones TV show.
Okay.
And it's an hour and 7 minutes long.
Wow.
And I did a preview of it on Friday's stream of yesterday's stream, where it was I gave a taster of some of the worst bits.
Mm-hmm.
And so that people are prepped and ready for Tuesday when we watch the full thing.
Okay.
It's an interesting dive into the mouth of madness, but it must be done.
Yeah. All right. Sounds like a interesting live stream.
Yep. And then on Thursday, I'm going to be helping Neph Champion with her Isekai alternative person going into alternative world book that she is working on creating. And that will probably be sometime at 2 Mountain Standard Time. So thank you all for coming to this stream. I very much appreciated you watching. I'm so happy of how it turned out, and I'm grateful that Lezbi Nerdy, Jen, was able to come on with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Check out her channel. She's great. I absolutely love her stuff. Please check it out. Subscribe to her channel. You won't be disappointed. Anyway, thank you all, and good night.
Bye.